So the other day, while I was streaming, I wanted to do a melee status effect build, which, you know, normally they're not really melee focused, but that's what I wanted to do. And a guy on stream, I think it's Jaren, he recommended using the Harvester Scythe, this one right here, with Shocker. It is really good. I swear, like, when I had gotten it, that I had, like, tried it out, but apparently not, because otherwise I would have remembered this. It's super fun. It's pretty solid too. Like, it was, I mean, you know, with the overall right setup, it's going to be pretty solid, right? I went through, I think, most of a zone with it. I ended up fighting a Night Weaver with it, ignoring my screw-ups. Overall, went pretty smoothly, I would say. Like, and it has some pretty solid potential to do, like, a lot of damage, right? Because what the Harvester Scythe does is it sends out a Spectral Scythe after a charge attack, right? And so you can, like, charge it up with your first charge attack, because that'll swing out, hit them like 3 times, and then the Spectral Scythe comes out, which will then trigger the Shocker, and then it'll, like, charge up your Shocker thing again. And then if you follow it up immediately, like, your second charge attack is already, like, proccing it again, and so next thing you know, you're going, like, back to back to back, like Shocker effects going on. Like, look at that. Like, like, ridiculous, right? Like, it's pretty nuts. Like, I mean, that's, having 4 guys on you like that is pretty ideal, at least melee wise, because you can get a whole bunch of hits all at once, proccing a lot of Shocker things, like, immediately. So that, yes, that's, like, ideal situation. But they just got shredded, dude. Like, it's pretty good. It's a really fun combo. So basic combo that you need: Harvester Scythe, and then the Shocker Mutator. Shocker Mutator is going to be random, so I mean, you just got to be lucky in what you get. And then the Scythe you can get from the Devoid Quietus. There's, like, a specific spot. I don't have it set up. I can't explain it. You'll have to just kind of, like, look it up, right? But that's, like, the basic combo. Now, what I ended up doing too is, like, as I was looking through different amulets, one choice, there's, like, 2 main choices you could go with, right? The first one might be Shock Device, just increase that shock damage and overloaded damage, just lean into the lightning aspect of it. But you also run Matrix Insignia. This is just going to increase your melee damage in a pretty good amount too, 35%. And then all the hits are going to be restoring stamina, so you're never going to run out of stamina because they're multi-hit attacks. And especially when you send out a second Spectral Scythe, like, you're just not going to run out of stamina, right? It's really good. And then from there, I think you've got a lot of flexibility with the rings. Like, I don't feel like I really need many of the other ones. I've got the Berserker's Crest on because it makes the charge attack, well, it makes all the attacks faster and reduces the stamina cost of the charged melee attacks. But since I'm getting so much stamina back, like, I kind of don't need the stamina in a way. But the faster charge time and stuff is nice as well. That really, like, makes us able to send out a lot of things all at once. I'm trying out something new here too with it, with the wood ring, because in theory, right, if I can do a lot of attacks back to back to back, I'll be able to do a ton of damage to these guys. So if I can stagger them, that just opens up more opportunity for me to just absolutely lay into them. So I thought the wood ring could be pretty good, especially with all the multi-hits. Even though the Scythe has a minus 33% stagger value, because it hits so much, I feel like maybe that wood ring can really help to, like, build it up, you know what I mean? Especially when you're doing the charge attacks, you know, not only are you hitting multiple times with the physical hit, then you're doing it with the spectral part. So in theory, I feel like it could go pretty well. And then also, I'm just running the new Grandor. I mean, I've always really liked Voltaic Grandor as the first, like, mod I got that I didn't start with. And it's just so much better too. And so with us having a little bit more emphasis on lightning, it's a pretty good pick to use, right? And I say emphasis on lightning. I don't actually have the shock device on, but if you did, it would make it an even better pick. Or if one of your rings was something like the grounded stone, it would be even better too. And so that's, I think that's what I'm kind of liking about this setup, right? is like the basic bones of it are fairly straightforward. The Scythe and Shocker. And then from there, I think Matriarch's Insignia is the best pick just because it really allows you to sustain with your charged attacks to just go back to back to back. And those are like the 3 main pieces. And then, of course, I have the Ritualist on, and I also have Challenger on. But I don't know that I would say they are required. The Ritualist is nice because it does spread the status effects, but in a way, like, it doesn't really feel like I need it to do that because Shocker is hitting guys in an AoE. Does it say the radius? 10.5 meters. Do I have points in amplitude? I do. So, you know, it's hitting at a radius there anyway. So in a way, I kind of don't really need the Vile perk to spread the status effects. But what it does do, it does increase the amount of status effect damage they take. So it does increase how much damage that Overloaded is doing. But maybe you do really just want to go with, you know, the Die Hard perk of the Challenger, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it. But I mean, 1700 damage on that thing, I mean, it's a lot. And so some of my choices that I've got, like, I think are probably maybe not necessarily the absolute best, but they're pretty good picks. But you can take the basic idea of them and use what you've got, right? Now, another bad thing with it, because this is like melee focused, it's not going to be perfect against everything. If you're running around Nerude and you got a bunch of flying robots, this is next to useless, right? It's super fun when it works, but with it being melee focused, if you're not fighting melee type enemies or enemies who are on the ground, terrestrial, ready to go, it's just not going to work as well, right? Because you can't hit them. You can't hit them. If you're fighting Mother Mind, you're shit out of luck. If you are fighting Lydusa, again, same thing. But if you're fighting Ravager, it was the world boss I fought was freaking Nightweaver, and that went surprisingly well. If you're fighting anybody who you can actually just go to town with melee on, awesome time, awesome experience. You know, once you go into those other guys, you're gonna have to, you know, switch gears, pivot a little bit. Here is a specific loadout that I've got going on, right? So we've already kind of touched on it. Ritualist, Challenger. I do have on Miasma, though I typically don't use it very much. I was running Eruption, but not even Eruption was really doing much for me. I just don't really need the skills to do much for me at all. Challenger, Juggernaut has been obviously the one to go with. We get the stacks of Bulwark. It makes our melee speed, damage, and everything just better. So it's just the pick for us to do, right? Matriarch's Insignia, like I said, that's the one we're doing here. Just makes our actual Scythe attacks so much better and gives us the stamina. Berserker's Crest, melee speed, and reduced the melee stamina cost. Now this is kind of like an additional like help with stamina as well as help with speed. Some other options you could go with would be something like the Brawler's Pride for melee speed and melee critical chance. You could also run the Drakestone Pearl. This is going to allow you to get that stamina regeneration during your melee attack, so you can be regenerating that stamina. And then at that point you could maybe switch out the Matriarch's Insignia for something else. So maybe if you don't have this one, run like the Drakestone Pearl for stamina if you've gotten that, right? These are all like options, you know. Shadow of Misery, status effect damage by 20%, because the shock is a big part of our damage, so just a 20% bonus to that is solid. But if you don't have that one, you know, another option is going to simply be the Burden of the Destroyer, because it's simply 15% across the board. So not only are we increasing our status effect damage by 15% with the Burden of the Destroyer, you're also going to be increasing your melee hits, your ranged hits, etc., right? So you could do something like that. You could also run the Grounding Stone, which, I mean, it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure you buy that from Reggie, so it, you know, fairly accessible, right? So that's going to increase your shock damage by 15%, which includes your overloaded, but it does include increase your shock resistance as well. So it doesn't do as much damage as the Shadow of Misery, but you can get an increase in your shock resistance. So depending on what you're dealing with, maybe that would be a good pick for you. The Wood Ring, right? This is one I've been kind of swapping around. So I thought some extra stagger damage could be pretty solid, but what I was actually running earlier was something for a little more survivability. It was actually Ring of the Robust. I find that actually adds a good amount of survivability for me if I can get it up. There you are. Increase your max health by 10, increase your armor by 20%. So right now, I mean, with prisms and stuff kind of added in right now, I'm at 50% damage reduction, 165 health. That's also with a concoction to give me increased maximum health. So this on, we've got 176 health and 54%. So we're getting 4% more damage reduction and a little bit more health to kind of cover us. I like it, but in general, to me, you could kind of just trade this out for any kind of defensive ring. And even then, right, I was just running the wood ring, which is, it's kind of defensive. Like, if you consider staggering an enemy defensive, it is, but it's also sort of offensive because it means you can just keep dealing damage to them. It's, you know, it's kind of in a weird, interesting place. And then the last one is the Red Ring of Death. We're really only applying one specific status effect, so duplicating that is solid. Like, Red Ring of Death is going to be pretty good. Even if you have a few status effects on there, it loses its potency as you have more and more and more status effects, right? You're going to see more diminishing returns because of that 10% reduction, but you're still getting a doubling effect on something, as long as it's a good something. So our Shocker is doing 300 shock damage right now, the shock damage now applies overloaded, dealing 468 shock damage. Now, if you take that off, it's going to go up a little bit, supposedly, right? 500 damage. But you need to consider that that's 500 damage once versus 468 times 2. But overloaded is a little weird, though, so it's not quite like the other actual damage over time effects like fire or corrosion, where they're doing a ticking effect every second, and you can actively see 2 damage value numbers going on, right? So it is a little different in how it presents itself. Trait wise, I don't know that anything was like super like vital, right? Amplitude is really nice because it helps out with just the radius on all kinds of effects, but from there a lot of it was just survivability, man. Like triage, regrowth, fortify, vigor. I even had points in bark skin. I think these were leftover points that I had, right? Yeah, like it was just stuff to keep us alive for the most part, you know what I mean? And then a couple points in some stamina stuff just for my own personal quality of life. So there's a little bit of flexibility because a lot of it is not super dire to do whatever we're trying to do. Armor wise, I do have Zealots on, Fey Royal, and Zealots wraps. It gets us at a 49 weight limit, so we're at a pretty high, like, this is pretty optimal as far as, like, weight to damage reduction, like, shenanigans or something, though granted, I haven't compared it, so if you go and you check some spreadsheet that's somewhere on Reddit, you can probably find the true optimal setup, right? You could also run the Dandy Topper. That actually puts us at 54.5 versus, what was it? Oh yeah, a 0.2% increase, so you could do the Dandy Topper. Yep, and then my fragments. Health bonus, status effect damage, melee damage. And then my prism is just a whole melee one that I've been, you know, just kind of slowly chipping on. Unfortunately, it's not like when I chose all those melee bonuses and stuff, I was still under the impression that everything could kind of like fuse together. So I don't think a single one of them fuses, but it is what it is. Use what you've got in whatever prism that you've got going on, and you're going to get yourself some bonuses, right? Now, one of the things, a way to kind of like use this thing with the scythes, as I'd been messing around with it, is to, you can wait until they're really close to you, but I actually really like to kind of like lead the target. And what I mean by that is, if I know a guy is walking towards me, instead of running all the way up to them, like if this is the enemy, I'm not going to run all the way up to him and then do the charged attack. If I know he's walking towards me, I use a charge attack early so that he walks into the spectral scythe. And so if you practice it a little bit, you can get the timing down and then just hit them as they actively come into you. I mean, you can time it as well where your physical scythe is hitting them as well. So it's all just a matter of timing, you know? Oh, I didn't touch about my ranged weapons at all. I'm so sorry. They're not important. Like, they help. Like, they're obviously, you gotta choose them. So I chose Voltaic Grandeur, like you saw. It's much better now. I put Charged Wounds in there. I just leaned really heavy into Shock right now. That's just what I chose to do, right? But it's flexible. Do what you gotta do. Status effects are gonna be your friend here. Sparkfire Shotgun is gonna be a solid choice as well. Double Barrel, it's just what I had on, dude. Feedback's not even useful for this, but I use it with Creeping Mist because it's going to have them take more status effect damage and then more likely to take critical hits. So it's one that I typically forget about because it's a subtle mod, right? It's not like Voltaic Grandeur or something that's doing a big lightning ball effect, but it is super helpful to really make your mods pop. So your status effects pop. So it is a good choice. Now I've done some similar setups with Shocker melee type things before. In the past, there's been two other weapons I've typically used it with, and that would be the Spectral Blade and the Crystal Staff. Spectral Blade is just a lot of fun and a pretty solid melee weapon. It's probably one of my absolute favorite ones. It's just super cool. It's just super cool. And the big whirlwind effect of it makes it pretty easy to do a bunch of multi-hits on a bunch of guys and trigger Shocker fairly easily, so you can do the big lightning effect on a lot of guys. Now, Crystal Staff is also really fun because it is a bunch of shock damage, so I did a whole big shocking warrior thing way back at some point when the second DLC came out, and so that is a solid pick as well. And so what I was finding earlier, I was doing some just random quick play with people, and like I said, the size isn't going to be perfect on everything. So you fight Mother Mind or Alepsis Tara, it's not going to help you. So in those circumstances, I used the Crystal Staff because you charge it up, it does ranged attacks, and then you're good to go. Like that's it, right? But I imagine you could probably make it work with maybe one of the others. Like, this is going to be the ideal weapon right now as far as a straight melee goes, because you get the second follow-up, like Ethereal Hit, that's going to do a bunch of hits as well. But some other options you could maybe think about, like, I mean, the Bone Chopper is fun because its charge attacks are a double swing hit, right? So that'll do a bunch. The Flails, the Mirage is super fun, etc. But I also imagine that you could make it work pretty well with like the Ritualist Scythe. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to give it kind of a go and see how it feels. But I'm sure it'll be fine, right? But the Scythes are super fun because the charge attacks are the multi-hits, which allows you to charge up the Shocker quickly and then proc it and go from there. And you need to kind of keep in mind that I will oftentimes get really bent on, or like really focused, like hyper fixated on like a specific thing. So like, oh, I have to do the charge attack. That's where the Spectral Scythe is coming out from. That's how I'm triggering effects and all the things, right? And so I will try to only do charged attacks when there are times like I just need to do standard attack. Just run in, just hit him a couple times, and that's it. And then you're good to go, right? Like, just hit the guy. Like, you don't have to do a charge attack every single time. So keep that in mind. So far, this is fine. Obviously, right? One. Doom. Oh, did I run out of stamina? No, I didn't. I don't think. Yeah, it's fine. You could totally make this work, right? There's nothing that'll stop any of the size from working. The Bone Chopper is fine as well. I have a Dran Alchemist that I'll do a video for here, probably next maybe. It uses a Bone Chopper and Shocker, so I mean, it'll work. Do something like that. Let's go fight Keula. This is Keula, right? Yes, let's go fight Keula. Also, I would like to say, right, I mean, this is obviously, let's go fight Keula now. Rondor is so nice for this setup right now. Like, we're so focused in on melee, but sometimes you get into big rooms like this, and it can be difficult to, like, clear out a lot of trash mobs. The Voltaic Rondor is so good for it now, because you lob it out there, and it just, look, it's still going, and it's still clearing guys for us. It's so good now, and it complements the setup so nicely to clear up all these jerks for us. It's amazing. And then, of course, because we have the Ritualist going on, the status effects are just spreading and dealing damage. Now, granted, the damage right now is kind of low, but it's still, it just, between that Rondour and then us being able to spread the status effect, it just makes it so easy for us to help clear big rooms. Or we could just use our miasma and let that do work too, of course. All right, Q time. Here we go. What do I have on? Oh, I still got this one. I'll put the wood ring back on. Stagger's weird, right? Because, I mean, obviously, your regular guys and elites, particularly elites, like, regular guys typically die pretty fast, but elites, you know, can totally stagger them. But, bosses are so weird with stagger. Some guys, I'm like, oh yeah, they totally got staggered, but, like, there's, in particular, a lot of world bosses, I'm like, nothing happened to them. Like, what is the point of even having a stagger value? But at the same time, like, I don't know, dude. All right, hun. Let's do it. So, we should be able to do something pretty good here. Maybe I can... There we go. All right, now I'd like her to come over here. Or actually drop a mist. Okay, she is staying over there still. Thanks for wasting my Juggernaut. One, oops. Oh, God. What were those dodges, dude? Ow, that hurt really badly. But we're doing a lot of damage. Look at that damage. Even with my absolutely awful dodges, ruining my health, she was getting absolutely chunked, right? Where's it at? Oh. Where's she at? Whoop. Ah. What are these dodges I'm doing? Oh, alright, we gotta go back down. Oh, alright, you know what? Here's what I think about that. We'll ricochet that back that way. And I'll try not to mess up. Okay. Okay, now we're good. Oh, come on, really? There we go. Smoke. Yeah. In the right conditions, the right bosses, it's going to absolutely recommend. It's always been my mentality, my thought, opinion. Anytime you have a melee thing, they're really strong against the right things, right? Like executioner type, aberrant guy, Kaula. Like anybody who is like a melee kind of boss, a melee build is going to be exceptionally strong against. But then you're gonna start reaching into weird middle ground guys where it's gonna be not nearly as effective, and then you're gonna hit the bosses where it just is completely ineffective. It's useless, right? And that's just the nature of the melee builds in this game. You know, like it's not necessarily meant to be a melee game. It's a gun game. You know, the melee is just also an aspect of it, a tool to be used in the right situation, you know? So some of my favorite builds are melee, but you know, it's just not designed to be effective in every situation. It's a choice, you know? And if you make yourself super effective at it, you're going to be very super effective in those circumstances. But yeah, give it a go. It's so much fun. So much fun to use it. Even with any other, you know, regular scythe, I find them really fun. You know, any of the weapons I talked about are pretty fantastic with it, I would say. Yep, that's it. Take care.